Hi, welcome back out to the Sydney Fine Arts Center. Out here, we're going to continue some of our brush studies, brush technique studies. Now, there's one that I developed. Started doing this about 12, 14 years ago. I call it Petal Edging, and it's where I would drive the interest to the outside edge of the petal. Now, a lot of these techniques that we're showing here on this entire page, in the classroom, are interrelated. It's interrelated with the philosophies that we're going to study in color theory and that I tell you about in other classes. And a lot of this has to do with brush edging, brush movement, consistencies of paint, and everything that are concepts. They're not rules, they're concepts. I like to show you what this stuff does. Okay, I don't like to create a rule because rules kind of hinder your creativity. Okay, so I like to show you what this stuff is, but don't remember these are not hard and fast rules. Okay, all right, so let's come down here. I have a board, just a regular board. I'm just going to show you what the petal edging technique is kind of like. First, let's put out some white. I'll put out some titanium white here. And we'll put out a couple colors. What do you want to paint today? Let's do kind of maybe a yellowish kind of rose or so here. Here's a little yellow oxide. And as I'm putting out these colors, what I want you to do is always look at them and say, okay, that's a PY42. That's an opaque pigment. Why is he picking up that particular pigment? Because it is an opaque pigment. Let's pick out this one, semi-transparent PY74. Hansa yellow. You start to understand why. This is a good opaquing color. This is a nice, brighter, lighter, more intense color. Keep these always in your mind while you're doing this. Let's put out a cool color. Let's use a quinacridone. Not quite as dark or as cool as you would have in a like a red violet or so, but PV 122 is a beautiful color. And let's put out a little pine green here for a second, just as a nice little green. I'm just going to show you what the edging technique is like. But what you have to remember is edges drive interest, okay? Edges drive interest here. And, that's what we're going to be using to create interest in everything we do, is our particular edges. Now, let me just grab this brush, put a little water in it. Let's just make a little background movement color. Let's take a little yellow, green. Let's cool that off a bit. I do like to always add a little burnt sienna and stuff, but sometimes you don't have it. So these are beautiful colors too. Add a little white, which will lighten and soften it just a bit. Let's just add a little background movement here that we can paint on top of. I like to have just a little movement because that always movements enhance, and that's what we do as artists, right? We paint movements and stuff going on in our paintings, and that's what gives them life and interest and stuff. So we like that. A little bit of yellow streaked up through. And one of the reasons why I do this as well, even though I might use, and this is just a little practice board, is that this immediately gets me loose and relaxed. It starts to think, of casual looks and stuff like that. Sometimes I'll take a paper towel and pull through. So sometimes I'll do this and I'll pull through other ways and pull color off and do all kinds of stuff. Get different things going on into the background. Sometimes I'll use water. I'll put a little bit of water onto this and it'll drive right through the color and give you a different look like that. I play and I try and I do all different kinds of things, but I like movement into the background. Now let's just say I'm going to paint a couple of. First, let's dump that brush into the background. Now, there's brushes that you'll see me in many different books and many different things. Sometimes I use a filbert for the edging technique. Sometimes I use a flat. It's just an edge. You're going to drive a contrast to an edge. That's all you're going to do. And so, the filberts I do a lot when I want to have a petal that looks more like a stroke. So I do this with stroke petals, you know, stroke daisies and stuff like that. If I don't want too much of a stroke, I'll use a flat. They will give you completely different. This gives you that nice rounded head, which looks like a stroke, and this one gives you the squared off edge, which looks more like alla prima type technique, where we're putting on color marks. So this one I always think strokes. This one I think marks, okay? So I'm just going to do it this way here first. Let's take a light color. Let's put up a little bit of yellow, and this will opaque it, this will brighten it. So I'll use those two together, okay? And I'm just going to put on a little color. Now, this, if you're going to paint a little blossom like this, one or two little blossoms here, the whole thing is the edges, So petal edging technique, marks, color marks, everything that you do, you're always thinking about edges, and we're going to talk about in the next one we're going to talk about lost and found edges. But I'll just show you right here. So I'm always thinking of my edges. So say I want to edge right up in through here, and I'll push out a little bit here, soften out some of my edges. I want my edges to be softened. I want to be able to control where my edges are in this particular painting. So let's put a little more yellow. Let's put one right up over here. A little bit more yellow or something like that. Okay. So we'll drive one right up there like that. And we can even put, let's even come right over here. Let's just make this even a little bit more of a painting. Let's drive a rose here. So we'll do some blossoms and a little rose right over here, all kind of towards the yellow side. But I'll smooth it all out. Now, some of you may start to see the blossoms. Some of you may start to see the rose. What I'm doing is just putting on some color. Now, you would, as the artist, you would start to think about some of your other things, that thin paint versus thin paint, thick paint versus thin paint. That's what I'm starting to think about a little bit here. Texture. It's another one of our techniques. Where am I going to have texture? Okay, so all of these techniques can be interrelated inside of a painting here, and this is why I say I may use 20 or 30 of them in a painting to get different looks. Okay, so we're going to do the petal edging technique though here, show you how to drop it off petal. So first, let's just give a nice little center. We'll cool down, take some of our yellow, we'll cool it down here with a little bit of our quinacridone violet here. I love that color. Let's push that into the center. Let's not leave an edge, so we'll push this off a bit. So we'll drop this one down here at this angle. Don't leave an edge, just push on a little color. And this one will push up here onto this side. We might as well come in here, and I'm just setting up the flowers here for the petal edge technique. I'll come up over here and I'll say the rose is going to gaze out this way, so I'll drop the little center in the rose. I want it to get lighter and more airy as it come out, so I can push it out like this, leave a little bit of that color mark for movement. We'll talk about all of that. So, it's good when you're looking at these brush techniques, watch them all the way through, all of them, and then come back and watch them again, so you'll see different things. So here I'll let it come out a little bit, and this will be the shadow side to the rose here, okay? So what I'm doing is not creating any edges, so that my petal edges, when I come to make them, they'll have the most interest. Now I'm going to take that color out of the brush here for a second, okay? And now what I'm going to do is the actual petal edging technique to build this. So what I want to do is I want to make a more opaque color here, a little bit of that and a little bit of this color here. Sometimes I do it transparent. And then what I want to do is I don't want to blend. That's the last thing I want to do is blend. But I do want to pull through and grab myself a little edge to my petal like this, so that when I come over here, I can lean over. Now, when you do it with a filbert, where you put that color is very important. I put it on the front corner, so that my brush is out like this, okay? I drag that front corner of the brush through like this. So here it's on the side and there it's on the corner. And what that does is that front corner, what that does is that allows me to lean over with this and actually physically draw the edge of the petal, whatever it is I want. And I'll get these little highs and lows, and it just makes the rose look or the petal look fantastic. And then I roll over to the other side here and I granulate off and push off. So what I have is an edge to a softness right there. That's the petal edging. That's what I like. So that physically draws the petal. So if I want to make a back petal to this little blossom here, I'll draw over the edge. If I want to widen it out, I don't see, I'm leaning over onto that edge and drawing it. See how I'm turning the brush over right here, drawing that edge. Now the second stroke that I come back through here, I can widen it out. And then if I want the blossom petal to soften, I lift off to the other side of the brush and just push a little bit that I can then turn. So now I have an edge of the petal all the way to a soft edge of the petal. I'll come through here, pick up a little more paint, maybe this edge, a little more paint right here. And if I want to set another blossom petal right here, I would lean over onto this edge right here and pull that petal edge down like that. Then flatten it out a bit for my second stroke here, and then lean over to push a little bit of color on that other soft side. But I use most of it, I push there. So you got the edge and the edge right there, pushing that out. So, and vary the color. Sometimes if you're coming down here to a shadow side, maybe add a little more shadow. Not quite as much white, maybe just a little bit. Let's just lean right over onto that edge, draw the edge, flatten it out, lighten it out just a little bit like that. So you see I actually make a petal edge. Now, I can come in and push this and just pick up a little bit like this, walk in, pick up a tiny little bit of white like that, and sometimes I'll come back and push in little edges of back petals if I want. So I'll walk in, you can even dump off all that white, just walk in and pick up a little bit like that, just the tiniest little bit, and I can use that to edge like one side of that and give just a light little edge. Or maybe I want to give a little mark of a tip of the petal right out here like that, or a little mark like we would do with a petted or something like that. I can come in here and push and soften some of those edges as they're coming in here into my center here. There's tons of ways, and I as the artist control that. Now I don't worry about it drying or anything because I'm drawing on petals. So if sometimes I'll draw this petal right across the front like that and leave a little edge. Sometimes I'll take that edge. Sometimes I'll pull out with the edge like this, so I leave that little edge. Now, what I don't want to do is get the edge and put stripes into it. I like movement, but I don't like stripes. So I will control that a little bit. Maybe pick up a little more light after I put that edge and just drop a little more light right there like that and put some of that in there. I can put in one more little angled petal there. Let's put a little more Hansa into that. Let's just pull through and pick up that little edge, okay? And let's just pull in kind of an angle here. So I kind of draw it. Just like you were going to trace on the edge of that petal, I'll trace that on like that. Now I'll flatten it out. Sometimes I'll just get rid of that white right out of the edge here, and I'll put the other side of the petal in like that. Now, I may want to come back and pick up a little bit and drop a little bit of the edge of the petal up on top of that one like that, and so on and so forth. There's all different kinds of ways in which I petal them and I paint them. Let's go up here to the rose for a second. So I'll grab a little more white or Hansa here, and I'll pick up some white right on the edge. This is where I would come in and drop in the top edge of that rose. If I need more, or if I think I need more, I'll go grab some more here like this. Just pick it up right on the edge or corner of that brush, lean over onto it and stroke and get that nice light. Now, you can paint halftones, you can shear it off here or something like that, but you've got a nice petal edge right there. That's done by that petal edging technique, by leaving that real sharp bead of paint. It's thicker paint. It's more contrast. It's a sharp bead. there, and that's what's driving the interest. Let's pick up here. Let's just pull right through. Let's put in a petal right out here coming in. Okay, so I'll pull in. Let's pick up a little more paint. So sometimes I'll pick up a little bit more paint. Sometimes I'll tap it lightly, but I don't want to destroy the bead. And then that puts a lot more white out onto it. See how there's more white into the petal there? And then I flatten the brush out, and then I lean over to the other side of the brush here and push that. And then I can soften that movement here like that. So let's put a couple of those on. Let's just draw one across. Sometimes I'll draw across and then pull in, so I get some light across the front of it. There's all kinds of ways here. I started doing this when I tried to get away from floated color years ago, because we always just seem to float color and edge load and multi-load roses and stuff, and you get all that. But I wanted to have a way that I can control more variation into the petal. So I can do this. I can then come back, just pick up more white, touch that a little bit further, and widen out that light edge. Leave some of that edge for that interest. So I can control so many different things. If I'm talking about building a rose, maybe I want to build the body of the rose up like this with more paint. And then soften the edge here. You can do it with a half tone. I've showed you that. You can push your finger there. If I want to edge something or put in a, let's say I want to put in a smaller, well, let's close off this first. I would drop down a little cooler, a little darker here. Drop on the shadow side of the rose here. Maybe not so much edges, so it disappears, lost in what we call found edges, lost edges. I'm going to show you that in another video. And you're going to, if you want to paint beautiful roses, you have to think of lost and found edges all the time. So I've got some found edges, which is the petal edge technique, some lost edges, which is just the whisper of the brush here, making the edges really lost. So I just whisper like this a little bit. Maybe I want just a whisper. And a lot of times you'll see me in books and stuff, and I'll say on the shadow side of the rose, I pull out. So I fracture this edge, so it gets a lost edge. Okay, but what does the petal edge technique do? It allows you to come in and draw a petal. So let's just say I want to draw a petal right up through here, maybe close off this rose a little bit right up there like that. Now, I can push to soften that, or I can come pick up a little bit of my yellow oxide and just dump it right in there like that and soften off that side of the rose. If I want to draw a petal right in here, well, let's put some yellow oxide in our brush and just a little bit of the light, just a little bit, and just draw right across, and all of a sudden I make that other little petal right there. I can draw another petal, build another petal. Or if I want more light up into the front of my rose, maybe I'll pick that up. Instead of picking it up on the edge, I pick it up a little bit more. So I make more of a, I always call it a body stroke. I put on more paint here. So I build that up. Now, this gives me a perfect little edge here to make a little angled petal. So I'll pick up that little edge, and instead of stroking it on the flat where I get a wide, if I want to make a little chiseled petal, now you can pull it or you can push it. Most of the time in stroke work we pull it. Here on these types of roses I push it a lot, but see I can curve that around and draw that right in and see that pretty little edge. It's not blended off. I don't want to blend it off, okay? So I make that pretty little edge there and it sits. Maybe I can pick up a little bit here and draw another little tiny one back here, maybe a little more cyan or a yellow oxide back here as it goes to the shadow side, and just push that. So I have a found edge and a lost edge there, right? Now, right in here, maybe I want to put another one in. Let's just take some yellow and let's just blur out some of that last edge that we had there. So I can come right in here, pick up some more yellow, pick up some white right along that edge, and I can set in another pretty little edged one right in there. That nice little edge, maybe a little bit more. So I'll tap if I want to get it across the brush a little bit more, so I have more white, I will tap it on the palette a couple of times like this. And what that does is, see, it pushes the paint across the brush. What you don't want to do, you know, if you want to have a sharp little edge, is touch the palette. So anytime you touch the palette, you walk this. But if you don't have enough paint, you'll lose the ability to draw the petal. So lots of paint. Draw the petal, lean over onto that edge, and just feather it off right there, right to the chisel of that little brush. Okay? I can pick up a little bit, walk this out here just a little bit maybe. Right there, that makes a pretty little petal right there like that, see? We can take the little edge. Let's just mark a little edge right there for that one. Maybe just a little bit of an edge. So you can see you can really build pretty roses. Don't use white. Go back to just a little tiny bit of the lighter yellow right here, and I'll just pick up a little edge and come back here and just turn that around. And see, you just make some, it makes nice little roses here. Maybe just a tiny little bit out here to these outside edges. Not as much white. I don't draw as much, just a tiny, tiny little bit. Whenever I'm on the shadow side of the rose, I use just a tiny little bit. So now you have those particular edges. After I put the edges on, let's say I want to come back and lighten up or build the flower. So I have the edges. Then I could take and use just more paint and come in and build the rose a little bit more, or a little more color, and leave the edges, and that makes a pretty rose as well, or a pretty blossom, or daisies, or whatever you want to do. You can come back and use a variety of techniques, just a little thin, a little water here with some quinacridone, and retint. We're going to talk about tinting and all that kind of stuff. Put a little more color. You can use the edge for some shadow here too. Let's push that edge right into some shadow here and drop the deep shadow side of that rose in, right like that. Push in and out. Maybe a nice little cord, deeper little shadow right in there, and push out just a bit here, right into that edge. So I went over that edge a bit, and it's not, I don't worry about it. I'll just take a little bit of paint, push a little bit back onto it again. And you'll see me sometimes, this is why I get little bits of pink and other little things around, because I end up doing that. I end up pushing stuff around and doing things like that. But it's a nice way to build flowers. And we can put more light color now that we have that edge, and just lighten up our entire blossom if you want, leaving the edge. Just put a little more light color, and the blossom becomes lighter again. But see, I don't go anywhere. I put that light color in, and I just kind of blush it around, but I don't lose that edge there. So that's the petal edging technique that just, gives you so much interest. So if I want to take some of this yellow here, draw through, pick up a little bit of white, like that, and I can use that to draw any of these back petals, flatten out the brush, turn it over to the other side to get some softness. Okay, we'll pull through, pick up a little bit more. Let's drop one right in here like this, widen it out. Okay, let's drop a little bit more, pick up a little bit more here, and just push a little petal right back behind there. Okay, and drop some other little colors right in there. So you can see, yeah, you can get a lot with just a real limited palette. You can drop some higher bit with just on the corner of the brush, just work that around. And that's kind of an edging technique too, putting on a little more pure color there. Touching that through. That's kind of nice. And let's take a little bit of this light color, a little bit of green in here. Well, green and violet are what? They're complements, really. They're real close to complements. Not perfect complements, a red would be, but close enough that it's going to give you a grayer color, see? So I can use that to gray down some of this color. And let's just take a little water with this, thin that just a bit, and pull a soft little blossom here coming down this way. And So I pull in, but see, it's just a soft little color. Then I'll pick up just a little more color. Now let's edge it right here. Let's turn this petal edge towards that rose, and let's just put on a soft little edge there. So on over here, just pull right through, pick up a tiny little bit of that, turn that up here, use that to draw this petal right there towards that rose. Right there. Let's draw a little, just a little one here. Let's draw that in. Set that back. And let this one this one's going to kind of fade away here. We'll just push a little color around and let that just kind of fade away there. That's kind of pretty. And maybe we'll come in with, we're going to talk about modeling brushes, but it's a modeling technique. I put one on, and I put the other on, and I tap the corner, and soon that Hansa lifts off. And if it doesn't lift off, then I'll just roll the brush over to the more oxide side, and I'll tap some of that around. Let's pick up a little more Hansa. Tap that around on the light side here. Just tap, lift, 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 lift. And if it doesn't run out, because there's still quite a bit of paint there, then I just roll over to the oxide side of the brush and put it on more soft. Right there like that. And we'll just run a little bit of that color right out here like this onto that one. And all kinds of other techniques you could use. Let me just swirl this around a bit in here. Get that nice rounding, smaller movement. All kinds of other things. Let's just take a little bit of a yellow-green here. Sometimes I like to really cool that down into a shadow. And you can use the negative painting that I showed you here to help crisp up some edges like that. Negative painting. We showed that one too. Let's just drop some ideas of some little violet into the green. They're almost complements, so it creates a nice toned color. Some movement there. Create a little bit of a shadow. We can use some negative painting. Maybe take away a couple of those little edges and let the negative painting do the edges. You can do that. Little negative painting there. Around like that. Yeah, that works as well. Let's get a little yellow in with some of that. That'll help brown it up. Here, get a nice stem here. Nice stem color. Here out like that. Maybe, and you can use some negative painting, maybe out onto this side. So even with the negative painting here, I'll keep it soft so that the petal edges have more contrast than my negative painting here. And so your eye will go out there to the petal edges. Now you could use edges to make leaves. You know, you can make all kinds of pretty leaves out here with edges. You can put some light colors onto them or something like that. But see, as I'm working through something like this, I'm looking at all different kinds and thinking different kinds of techniques to help develop my look that I have here on this particular painting. Maybe I want to shear. Maybe I want to just lighten up one side there. Shear off that petal. We talked about that one. You know, and I'm painting acrylic here, so my mind is starting to think some of the negative painting, acrylic type techniques that I can use when I'm developing something like this. And you know, and so it's kind of difficult for me, right now to sit there and say, okay, build this painting with just one technique. So you can see I'm using multiple techniques. So that's why I say it's very important for you to go down and watch all these techniques. Put them into your toolbox up here. You won't remember them all, but put them up here. And then as you're painting, you may pull out this or pull out this one, pull out this one. That is what gives your painting life, okay? For so many years, I painted only side load floated color. And then my paintings, yeah, they were nice. They were pretty. I sold a lot of them, wrote books with that. to me now they have no life, because they have no life and energy, because they're all the same. Everything in there is the same. So in a painting, like any type of painting that I do, I usually am working 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different types of techniques during the building process of this, looking for lost and found edges and textures and modeling of color, thin versus thick, color flowing out through the petals, the movement, the calligraphy of the brush. I'm thinking about all of this kinds of stuff, and I have all of these techniques that I pull out and use at different positions. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we may practice them on something like this, but yeah, can you paint more beautiful blossoms? Yeah, they're nice looking blossoms. I certainly can paint more beautiful ones. And I can certainly use like this color to negative paint back here. Leave it out kind of soft edges there, so I feel like I get the back edge of a petal of a leaf there. Maybe then shear off part of it there so that it goes just lighter, a little bit of an edge here. Drop some of this around. Change up your color so you're not always using the same green. Pull some of this around. This is some of the things that I think about, when I'm painting. Making other blossoms, lost edges. Let's cool some of this down just a little bit here. Some yellow oxide and some quinacridone and stuff, and just push some of that around. Maybe a bit more of that quinacridone cooler. Maybe there's some other yellow ones out over here. Maybe you pick up just a touch of the light here. Okay, so you just catch a feeling of some of this movement and some of this stuff out here. But the big thing is here, for this particular technique, the petal edging technique, you see the petal edge. See? That's what, so I pull through like this. I grab some other color. I determine, do I want it opaque or bright? I'm picking the pigments for what I want to do. Then I pull through. Now I pull through and I pick up that edge. Now that's just going to give me a nice edge to draw a petal. And I'm going to draw that petal with that, see? And so it's going to give me a nice perfect little edge, and I can push over onto that and draw around, gives me a nice edge. Now, if I want to widen it out, see, that's just a nice edge of contrast. If I want to widen it out, I can set the brush down and widen it out. And then if I want to soften it out, I lift that edge off and use this edge of the brush, which is just soft, and then you can push it, and you make a beautiful little petal, just like that. Okay? So even after I've come back here, I might pick up just a little bit of that light here. Back up onto this. I've used the negative painting there. I may come back and push that petal edge right back up on there again. Or restate see, I just touched a little more light, a little more white, and push a little bit more color right into that one. Let's push a little bit more. Little bit more. That's that nice light edge that's right here. And now the paint is getting thicker. There's another little thing of texture coming in. But I'm controlling that. I'm watching that. I may combine texture from one technique, petal edging from another technique. And I may combine 2 or 3 techniques together to get the look that I want into the flower or the blossom. If I feel that's a little lost there, maybe I pick up just a little edge of that and I just draw a little bit of an edge right there. Just slowly lifting that edge of that flower right there off of that one. Lots and lots of different ways. Draw that little edge right out there. See, I just leaned right over onto that edge and draw that edge. And it's a beautiful way to paint a flower. Let's put just a bit more light. We think about some of our other techniques, textures, thickness of paint. Let's build a little bit more light right in here. And let's soften. Let's just make this a nice flower. Let's go back to one more little technique of half tones and put a half tone in there. Curve that around to follow that bowl. And now you have a pretty little rose flower kind of composition here, setting it all up. You can do it with violets and reds and blues and all different kinds of whites. Big thing, it's a brush technique. It's a loading of the brush that creates the contrasting edge that you have, and you can make it soft or you can make the edge, and you're in control. All right? Does it take practice? Yep. It looks really easy to drag through and then roll over onto that. But let me tell you, your paint's got to be wet enough. You got to have enough paint. Look how much paint's on my palette. So you got to have enough paint to do what you want to do. Most people don't paint with enough paint. They get their paint too thin and it runs out halfway onto their petal. Okay? If I have enough paint on my brush, it's going to work. If it starts to run out, you need to start using more paint. If you start to get granulated look, you know, that's another look. That's not wrong. That's another look. But you need to have that that nice consistency of that edge to draw. And a lot of paint on that bead, and lean that brush over. And this is where the fusion brushes shine, because they soft enough to let that paint just lay off on that edge. And then the other side of it is soft to give that granulated edge too. So you get this beautiful look to your petals with the petal edging technique. Then use some negative painting, some other stuff. Have a bit of fun. If I wanted even more contrast, I could put more contrast in there. But I think that's enough for right now. All right? Practice it. Try a few little blossoms. Try it with some red ones. Try it with some white ones. Try all different kinds of stuff. You'll see I combine halftones and petal edging and all kinds of stuff together. Then you'll see some of my older lessons, 10 years, step back 10, 15 years. Excuse me, you'll see where I started with petal edging and built stuff off of that. Okay? All right. Give it a try and let me know if you have problems or so, but practice it. Then go use some halftones. Then go use some lost and found edges. Then come back and do petal edging again. And then when we go into rose classes and we go into landscapes, you're going to see me model brushes and edge and do all kinds of different things during that entire painting and mix that all up. So my painting has life and energy to it, because it's using multiple techniques, not just one to paint it. Okay? All right. See you on the next one.